Hello, I'm the GDDM. Today, hopefully, we'll figure out if railroading can be a good thing. And, real quick, the TLDR, my answer is yes, it can be a good thing. Feel free to turn the video off now if all you came here for was for someone to tell you that. Otherwise, stick around as we go over some pros, some cons, and finally some tips on implementing railroading in your game. But first, what is railroading in the game context? Most of you probably know what I'm talking about, but if you didn't, this isn't a video about trains. Commonly, railroading is when a DM will force a group of players down a certain path so that the story can continue as planned. Usually, this is seen as removing player choice and even outright forcing players to do things through various means. This can create animosity amongst the group, which is not what we want. This is our time in the week to come together to collectively have a good time. While some groups are okay with ninja clowns throwing starfish cookies at their party as they delve deeper into some hellish parody of a circus, it may not be for everyone. What I'm saying is, sometimes a game can spiral out of control. Having a central plot is like having a safety net for when there seems to be no direction. It can serve as two things for the party. Number one, it will give them something to lean back on when they're not sure what to do next. I've had a few groups where a sandbox-style game simply wouldn't work. They need some direction in between events. This can also be a great motivator for your party to take part in downtime, an aspect of the game that I believe is sorely overlooked. Number two, players might stray, but the tension the party feels should come from, in some way, the main plot. The party may be interested in hitting on the local duchy during the ball, but what if she's in league with the Escartants and their schemes to take over all of Malaquan for their motherland? We all play role-playing games to come together and get away from the normal confines of our everyday life. This can mean many different things for people, but at the end of the day, players want to be able to be cool, within reason. Player choice is important, and if you weren't making choices for your character throughout the session, you might as well be playing a board game. So imagine this, a group is on a quest to travel across the countryside to meet the king. Generic, I know, but stay with me here. The DM starts to describe the week-long trip as being uneventful, and they make it to the kingdom with no worries. The players, however, want to stop in some towns along the way, or go off into the woods because they've heard there's a nasty hag out there. Our lovely DM says that the people in the towns aren't very interesting and the woods are too dangerous for travel, then moves the party to the kingdom anyway. Now, this is an extreme example of railroading, and straight up took the choice away from the players. Here I would personally find it better to just admit, even if it's not true, that you haven't gotten around to writing stuff for these villages, or have something in store for the woods later on. This way, it sounds more like you're listening to what they want to do, you just may not have all the information right now. Improv can only get you so far, and I look forward to prepping for this kind of small stuff in another podcast. I think we can all agree that we love to roll dice. I mainly DM for online sessions nowadays, and I still keep dice on me to roll from time to time. The dice of the game are to represent the forces of fate and random chance. It's important to note that when rolling a d20, or any other dice for that matter, there is always a chance of some kind of success or failure. If there is something that has to happen narratively in my games, I don't roll for it, or I don't make my players roll for it. This leaves it up to chance on what the outcome will be. If a player rolls a dice, it needs to have impact. Not allowing that roll, either high or low, to matter will devalue the fact that it was even rolled. I try to never ask a player to roll if I'm not ready for either a success or a failure in the most spectacular way. Everyone has rolled to do something that the DM offhandedly allowed that shouldn't work, and then rolled super well. Be ready for these outcomes, and it'll make you look like the leader of some shadowy cabal. One of the best things that you can do with railroading is making sure your story is told as mentioned before. As I see it, this can be, for the most part, a good thing. I would say most players with buy-ins to your story want to be involved in the narrative. The hardest part is getting them to do things that line up with the story you have in mind. Say our party is traveling across the deserts of Slovenia. We, as the DMs, know the group needs to uncover the lost ruins of some kingdom. Now, after we have them fight some random encounters showcasing that it's a dangerous place, we can drop the crypt wherever we feel it necessary. We already have the right tone, so why not throw in a quick sandstorm to give them a gentle nudge inside? Coming up with the ways to plant our plot in front of the players is how we can make it seem as if it's their choice. They got to choose which door prize, but we already know that it's always a winner. I'll give another example about allowing a player to make a roll on something that probably should have worked. For this, I'd figured I'd use an example of not letting the dice speak for themselves, and then how we could fix it up a bit. There was a time when a friend group went into this dungeon in search of an orb to destroy this portal to a demonic hellscape. Honestly, I think we've all been there. Long story short, this priest-like character was holding the orb aloft monologuing as they do about their plan, and the monk wanted to grab the orb from them. The DM allowed it, and they rolled, of course, a natural 20. So what happens, listeners? The DM said that they couldn't get the orb, and they still failed. Well, that sucks. If they were going to fail anyway, just tell them that they wouldn't be able to act in time. Since they were allowed to roll the d20, it needed to be upheld. Afterward, the party ended up being sucked inside the portal into the new land. Now, what could we have done differently there? The obvious choice was letting the monk actually grab the orb since he rolled so well. He grabbed it, and the unstable connection to the cultist causes the portal to suck in the party. Maybe they wake up on the other side with the orb, more juicy tension of what to do with that evil artifact. Or the orb is gone for some reason. We can leave the why to the party to contemplate. If there's no reason for the characters to know what happened, the player shouldn't know either. With this little change, we still got to the end point of getting them through the threshold, but the players felt bad for snatching that orb. And isn't being cool mostly the reason we play cool characters? Here's one more, and then we'll move on. A cared-for NPC was found in an unconscious state. Now, the reason for the NPC being in this situation isn't as important to the story, but it seemed to be in a vindictive nature. The party quickly rushes over to heal them and ask if they can make a heal check to stabilize them. With the okay, they get an astonishing roll of over 30. Jeez, honestly, calm down, people. That's way too high. The DM said that it didn't do anything, though. They couldn't even see anything with magical detection. That's important, as it turned out later that the character was under a false death spell. Why was that information held from the party like that? Misleading your audience is lazy writing in my book. Like when a horror movie kills a character with no witnesses to only bring them back as the killer later in the movie? Don't mislead us and then act like it's smart writing. Again, if the party rolls either good or bad, they need something. Roll well and maybe they can tell no physical damage is done to the body. Roll poorly and let them know there's nothing more they can do. They're gone. But then they come back later. Why are they still alive? Should we be suspicious of you now? Are you even our real friend still? Who knows? But it's tension, and that's important to the story. We will make the party feel as if their choice to try and save them still matters. And actually making them feel as if it's their choice is perfect. Think back to a time when, in a game, you were told that you have to go do something. That may not have been as fun as you stumbling across something more interesting that you found yourself, right? It makes it seem like a more personal story. It's not a revolutionary concept, but I promise it'll work. When the party thinks they are in control of where the story goes, it will keep them wanting more, and eventually it starts to get easier and easier to hide the tracks. We want them to think they're driving on the highway, jamming to some sick tunes while we are remotely controlling the car. The main point of railroading is that their choices have to matter. If you can do that while staying within your narrative, then you'll be crafting a game that we'd all love to share. Honestly, it's sometimes safer to try and not railroad your group if all they want to do is run free and do whatever they want. But darn it, we're creators, masters of games. We take risks and put ourselves out there in our stories as we share it with others. So I'm asking you to go out and try. It may not work at first, but be open with your group, and when they start to notice the train tracks, they'll tell you. Trust me, they'll tell you. Well, thank you for sticking it out to the end of the video. It was more work than I thought it would be, because I wanted you to be able to walk away with something you could actually use in your game, not just listen to me ramble on for a while. Let me know what you think about the concept of railroading in the comments section. Have some stories you'd like me to share in upcoming videos? I'd love to hear about them. Anyhow, thank you again, and stay tuned, listeners.